Chapter 5 Liza. Pavel Pavlovitch had no idea of giving him the slip, and goodness knows why Velchaninov had asked him the question the night before. He was, indeed, at a loss to explain it himself. At his first inquiry, at a little shop near the Pokrovsky church, he was directed to the hotel in the side street, a couple of paces away. At the hotel, it was explained that M. Trusotsky was staying in the lodge, close by in the courtyard, in furnished rooms at Marya Sisoyevna's. Going up the narrow, wet, and very dirty stone stairs to the second story, where these rooms were, he suddenly heard the sound of crying. It seemed like the crying of a child of 7 or 8. The sound was distressing. He heard smothered sobs which would break out, and with them the stamping of feet, and shouts of fury, which were smothered, too, in a hoarse falsetto voice, evidently that of a grown-up man. This man seemed to be trying to suppress the child, and to be very anxious that her crying should not be heard, but was making more noise than she was. The shouts sounded pitiless, and the child seemed to be begging forgiveness. In a small passage at the top, with doors on both sides of it, Velchaninov met a tall, stout, slovenly-looking peasant woman of 40, and asked for Pavel Pavlovitch. She pointed towards the door from which the sounds were coming. There was a look of some indignation on the fat, purple face of this woman. "You see how he amuses himself," she said gruffly, and went downstairs. Velchaninov was just about to knock at the door, but on second thoughts he walked straight in. In a small room, roughly though amply furnished with common painted furniture, stood Pavel Pavlovitch without his coat and waistcoat. With a flushed and exasperated face, he was trying, by means of shouts, gesticulations, and even, Velchaninov fancied, kicks, to silence a little girl of 8, shabbily dressed in a short, black woolen frock. She seemed to be actually in hysterics. She gasped hysterically, and held out her hands to Pavel Pavlovitch as though she wanted to clutch at him, to hug him, to beseech and implore him about something. In one instant, the whole scene was transformed. Seeing the visitor, the child cried out, and dashed away into a tiny room adjoining, and Pavel Pavlovitch, for a moment disconcerted, instantly melted into smiles, exactly as he had done the night before, when Velchaninov flung open the door upon him on the stairs. "Alexey Ivanovitch!" he cried, in genuine surprise. "I could never have expected! But come in, here, on the sofa, or here, in the armchair, while I—" And he rushed to put on his coat, forgetting to put on his waistcoat. "Stay as you are, don't stand on ceremony." Velchaninov sat down in the chair. "No, allow me to stand on ceremony. Here, now I am more respectable. But why are you sitting in the corner? Sit here in the armchair, by the table. Well, I didn't expect you. He, too, sat down on the edge of a rush-bottomed chair, not beside his unexpected visitor, but setting his chair at an angle so as to sit more nearly facing him. "Why didn't you expect me? Why, I told you last night that I would come at this time." "I thought you wouldn't come. And when I reflected on all that happened yesterday, on waking this morning, I despaired of ever seeing you again." Meanwhile, Velchaninov was looking about him. The room was in disorder. The bed was not made. Clothes were lying about. On the table were glasses with dregs of coffee in them, crumbs, and a bottle of champagne, half full, with the cork out and a glass beside it. He stole a glance towards the next room, but there all was quiet. The child was in hiding, and perfectly still. "Surely you are not drinking that now," said Velchaninov, indicating the champagne. "The remains," said Pavel Pavlovitch in confusion. Well, you have changed. It's a bad habit, come upon me all at once. Yes, really, since that date. I'm not lying. I can't restrain myself. Don't be uneasy, Alexey Ivanovitch. I'm not drunk now, and I'm not going to play the fool now as I did at your flat yesterday. But I'm telling the truth. It's all since then. And if anyone had told me 6 months ago that I should break down like this, if I'd been shown myself in the looking glass, I shouldn't have believed it. You were drunk last night, then? I was, Pavel Pavlovitch admitted in a low voice, looking down in embarrassment. And you see, I wasn't exactly drunk then, but I had been a little before. I want to explain, because I'm always worse a little while after. If I get ever so little tipsy, it is followed by a sort of violence and foolishness, and I feel my grief more intensely, too. It's because of my grief, perhaps, I drink. Then I'm capable of playing all sorts of pranks, and I push myself forward quite stupidly, and insult people for nothing. I must have presented myself very strangely to you yesterday. Do you mean to say you don't remember? Not remember! I remember it all. You see, Pavel Pavlovitch, that's just what I thought, Velchaninov said in a conciliatory voice. What's more, I was myself rather irritable with you last night, and too impatient, I readily admit it. I don't feel quite well at times, and then your unexpected arrival last night— Yes, at night, Pavel Pavlovitch shook his head, as though surprised and disapproving. And what possessed me? Nothing would have induced me to come in to you if you had not opened the door yourself. I should have gone away from the door. I came to you a week ago, Alexey Ivanovitch, and you were not at home. But perhaps I should never have come again. I have some pride, too, Alexey Ivanovitch, though I do recognize the position I am in. We met in the street, too, and I kept thinking, why, he must recognize me, and yet he turns away. 9 years are no joke. And I couldn't make up my mind to come. And last night, I had wandered from the Petersburg side, and I forgot the time. It all came from that, he pointed to the bottle, and from my feelings. It was stupid. Very. And if it had been anyone but you— For you've come to see me even after what happened yesterday, for the sake of old times. I should have given up all hope of renewing our acquaintance. Velchaninov listened attentively. The man seemed to him to be speaking sincerely, and even with a certain dignity. And yet he did not believe one word he had heard since he came into the room. Tell me, Pavel Pavlovitch, you are not alone here, then? Whose little girl is that I found with you just now? Pavel Pavlovitch was positively amazed, and raised his eyebrows, but he looked frankly and pleasantly at Velchaninov. Whose little girl? Why, it's Liza, he said, with an affable smile. What, Liza? Muttered Velchaninov, with a sort of inward tremor. The shock was too sudden. When he came in and saw Liza, just before, he was surprised, but had absolutely no presentiment of the truth, and thought nothing particular about her. Yes, our Liza, our daughter Liza, Pavel Pavlovitch smiled. Your daughter? Do you mean that you and Natalia Vasilyevna had children? Velchaninov asked timidly and mistrustfully, in a very low voice. Why, of course. But there, upon my word, how should you have heard of it? What am I thinking about? It was after you went away God blessed us with her. Pavel Pavlovitch positively jumped up from his chair in some agitation, though it seemed agreeable, too. I heard nothing about it, said Velchaninov, and he turned pale. To be sure. From whom could you have heard it? Said Pavel Pavlovitch, in a voice weak with emotion. My poor wife and I had lost all hope, as no doubt you remember. And suddenly God sent us this blessing. And what it meant to me, He only knows. Just a year after you went away, I believe. No, not a year. Not nearly a year. Wait a bit. Why, you left us, if my memory does not deceive me, in October or November, I believe. I left T at the beginning of September, the 12th of September. I remember it very well. In September, was it? What was I thinking about? Cried Pavel Pavlovitch, much surprised. Well, if that's so, let me see. You went away on the 12th of September, and Liza was born on the 8th of May, so September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, a little over 8 months. And if you only knew how my poor wife— Show me. Call her, Velchaninov faltered in a breaking voice. Certainly, said Pavel Pavlovitch fussily, at once breaking off what he was saying, as though it were of no consequence. Directly, I'll introduce her. And he went hurriedly into the other room to Liza. Fully 3 or perhaps 4 minutes passed. There was a hurried, rapid whispering in the room, and he just caught the sound of Liza's voice. She's begging not to be brought in, thought Velchaninov. At last they came out. You see, she's all confusion, said Pavel Pavlovitch. She's so shy, and so proud. The image of my poor wife. Liza came in, looking down and no longer tearful. Her father was holding her hand. She was a tall, slim, very pretty little girl. She raised her big blue eyes to glance with curiosity at the visitor, looked at him sullenly, and dropped them again at once. Her eyes were full of that gravity one sees in children when they are left alone with a stranger and, retreating into a corner, look out solemnly and mistrustfully at the unfamiliar visitor. But she had, perhaps, some other thought, by no means childish, in her mind. So Velchaninov fancied. Her father led her straight up to him. This is an uncle Mother used to know, long ago. He was our friend. Don't be shy. Hold out your hand. The child bent forward a little, and timidly held out her hand. Natalia Vasilievna would not have her trained to curtsy, but taught her to make a little bow, and hold out her hand in the English fashion, he added by way of explanation to Velchaninov, watching him intently. Velchaninov knew that he was being watched, but had quite ceased to trouble himself to conceal his emotion. He sat perfectly still in his chair, held Liza's hand in his, and gazed at the child. But Liza was in great anxiety about something, and, forgetting her hand in the visitor's hand, she kept her eyes fixed on her father. She listened apprehensively to all that he said. Velchaninov recognized those big blue eyes at once. But what struck him most of all was the wonderful, soft whiteness of her face, and the color of her hair. These characteristics were so marked and so significant. Her features and the lines of the lips reminded him vividly of Natalia Vasilievna. Meanwhile, Pavel Pavlovitch had for some time been telling him something, speaking, it seemed, with very great warmth and feeling, but Velchaninov did not hear him. He only caught the last sentence. So that you can't imagine our joy at this gift from the Lord, Alexey Ivanovitch. She became everything to me as soon as she came to us, so that I used to think that even if my tranquil happiness should, by God's will, be at an end, Liza would always be left me. That I reckoned upon for certain." "And Natalia Vasilievna?" Velchaninov queried. "Natalia Vasilievna?" said Pavel Pavlovitch affectedly. "You know her way. You remember that she never cared to say a great deal. But the way she said goodbye to her on her deathbed. Everything came out then. I said just now, on her deathbed, but yet only a day before her death, she was upset and angry, said that they were trying to cure her with drugs, that there was nothing wrong with her but an ordinary fever, and that neither of our doctors understood it, and that as soon as Koch came back, do you remember our old friend, the army doctor? She would be up again in a fortnight. But there, 5 hours before her decease, she remembered that in 3 weeks' time we must visit her aunt, Liza's godmother, on her name day." Velchaninov suddenly got up from his chair, still holding the child's hand. Among other things, it struck him that there was something reproachful in the intense look the child kept fixed upon her father. "She's not ill?" he asked hurriedly, and somewhat strangely. "I don't think so, but—" "Our circumstances are here so—" said Pavel Pavlovitch, with mournful solicitude. "She's a strange child, and nervous at all times. After her mother's death she was ill for a fortnight. Hysterical. Why, what a weeping and wailing we had just before you came in. Do you hear, Liza? Do you hear? And what was it all about? All because I go out and leave her. She says it shows I don't love her any more, as I used to when mother was alive. That's her complaint against me. And a child like that, who ought to be playing with her toys, instead of fretting over a fantastic notion like that. Though here she has no one to play with." "Why, how— You're surely not alone here?" "Quite alone. The servant only comes in once a day." "And you go out and leave her like this alone?" "What else could I do? And when I went out yesterday, I locked her into that little room there. That's what the tears have been about today. But what else could I do? Judge for yourself. The day before yesterday, she went down when I was out, and a boy threw a stone at her in the yard and hit her on the head. Or else she begins crying and runs round to all the lodgers in the yard, asking where I've gone. And that's not nice, you know. And I'm a nice one, too. I go out for an hour and come back next morning. That's what happened yesterday. It was a nice thing, too, that while I was away the landlady let her out, sent for a locksmith to break the lock. Such a disgrace. I literally feel myself a monster. All mental aberration. All mental aberration." "Father," the child said, timidly and uneasily. "There you are at it again. You're at the same thing again. What did I tell you just now?" "I won't! I won't!" Liza repeated in terror, hurriedly clasping her hands before him. "You can't go on like this in these surroundings," Velchaninov said impatiently, in a voice of authority. Why, you're a man of property. How is it you're living like this? In this lodge, and in such surroundings?" "In the lodge? But, you see, we may be going away in a week's time, and we've wasted a great deal of money already, even though I have property." "Come, that's enough, that's enough!" Velchaninov cut him short with increasing impatience, as it were expressing plainly, "There's no need to talk. I know all that you have to say, and I know with what feelings you are speaking. Listen, I'll make a suggestion. You said just now that you'll be staying a week, maybe, possibly, even a fortnight. I know a household here, that is, a family where I'm quite at home. Have known them 20 years. The father, Alexander Pavlovich Pogoryeltsev, is a privy councillor. He might be of use to you in your business. They are at their summer villa now. They've got a splendid villa. Klavdia Petrovna is like a sister to me, or a mother. They have 8 children. Let me take Liza to them at once, that we may lose no time. They will be delighted to take her in for the whole time you are here, and will treat her like their own child. Their own child. He was terribly impatient, and did not disguise it. That's scarcely possible, said Pavel Pavlovitch, with a grimace, looking, so Velchaninov fancied, slyly in his face. Why? Why impossible? Why, how can I let the child go so suddenly? With such a real friend as you, of course, I don't mean, but into a house of strangers, and of such high rank, where I don't know how she'd be received, either. But I've told you that I'm like one of the family, cried Velchaninov, almost wrathfully. Klavdia Petrovna will be delighted to take her at a word from me, as though it were my child. Damn it all! Why, you know yourself that you only say all this for the sake of saying something. There's nothing to discuss. He positively stamped his foot. I only mean, won't it seem strange? I should have to go and see her once or twice anyway, or she would be left without a father. And in such a grand household. But it's the simplest household, not grand at all, shouted Velchaninov. I tell you there are a lot of children. She'll revive there, that's the whole object. And I'll introduce you myself tomorrow, if you like. And of course you would have to go to thank them. We'll drive over every day, if you like. It's all so... Nonsense. And what's more, you know that yourself. Listen, come to me this evening, and stay the night, perhaps, and we'll set off early in the morning, so as to get there at 12. My benefactor! And even to stay the night with you! Pavel Pavlovitch agreed, suddenly, in a tone of fervent feeling. You are doing me a charity, literally. Where is their villa? Their villa is in Liesnoy. Only, I say, what about her dress? For, you know, in such a distinguished household, and in their summer villa, too, you know yourself. A father's heart. What about her dress? She's in mourning. She couldn't be dressed differently, could she? It's the most suitable one could possibly imagine. The only thing is she ought to have clean linen. A clean tucker. Her tucker and what showed of her underlinen were, in fact, very dirty. She must change her things at once, said Pavel Pavlovitch fussily, and we'll get together the rest of what she needs in the way of underclothes. Marya Sisoyevna has got them in the wash. Then you should tell them to fetch a carriage, Velchaninov interposed, and make haste if you can. But a difficulty presented itself. Liza resolutely opposed it. She had been listening all the time in terror, and, if Velchaninov had had time to look at her attentively while he was persuading Pavel Pavlovitch, he would have seen a look of utter despair upon her little face. I am not going, she said firmly, in a low voice. There, there. You see, she's her mother over again. I'm not my mother over again. I'm not my mother over again, cried Liza in despair, wringing her little hands, and as it were trying to defend herself before her father from the awful reproach of being like her mother. Father, father, if you leave me... She suddenly turned on Velchaninov, who was in dismay. If you take me, I'll... But before she had time to say more, Pavel Pavlovitch clutched her by the arm, and with undisguised exasperation dragged her almost by the collar into the little room. Whispering followed for some minutes. There was the sound of suppressed crying. Velchaninov was on the point of going in himself, but Pavel Pavlovitch came out, and with a wry smile announced that she was coming directly. Velchaninov tried not to look at him, and kept his eyes turned away. Marya Sisoyevna appeared. She was the same peasant woman that he had met just before in the passage. She began packing the linen she had brought with her in a pretty little bag belonging to Liza. "Are you taking the little girl away, then, sir?" she asked, addressing Velchaninov. "Have you a family, then? It's a good deed, sir. She's a quiet child. You are taking her from a perfect bedlam." "Come, come, Marya Sisoyevna," muttered Pavel Pavlovitch. "Marya Sisoyevna, indeed. That's my name, right enough. It is a bedlam here, isn't it? Is it the proper thing for a child that can understand to see such disgraceful goings-on? They've fetched you a carriage, sir. To Liesnoy, is it?" "Yes, yes." "Well, it's a blessing you came." Liza came out pale and, looking down, took her bag. Not one glance in Velchaninov's direction. She restrained herself and did not, as before, rush to embrace her father, even at parting. Evidently she was unwilling to look at him either. Her father kissed her decorously on the head and patted it. Her lips twitched as he did so, and her little chin quivered. But still she did not raise her eyes to her father. Pavel Pavlovitch looked pale, and his hands were trembling. Velchaninov noticed that distinctly, though he was doing his utmost not to look at him. The one thing he longed for was to get away as quickly as possible. "After all, it's not my fault," he thought. "It was bound to be so." They went downstairs. There, Marya Sisoyevna kissed Liza goodbye, and only when she was sitting in the carriage, Liza lifted her eyes to her father, flung up her hands, and screamed. Another minute, and she would have flung herself out of the carriage to him. But the horses had started.